Welcome to Zion Lutheran Church in Anoka, Minnesota, as we celebrate 150 years forward in faith. Today we have the great honor of visiting with Marge Anderson, who served Zion for many years, starting in the year 1956 when she and her husband Ralph joined the church, and she continues to serve the church today. And I said when you joined the church, it was 1956, you and Ralph. How did it come about that you chose Zion Lutheran Church for your church home?
Well, I was teaching school and I would go home to Minneapolis on the weekends, so I kept my church there. But when I was teaching, I had Pastor, the minister's son from Zion Lutheran Church, the old church on 4th Avenue.
Okay.
And I had his son, and I got very acquainted with the family. So when I got married, then we moved out here, and then we right away joined Zion.
What is your most beloved memory of Zion Lutheran Church for you and your family? Does anything stand out that makes you smile?
I think when Pastor Heiliger asked me to start a preschool here, I think that was, I thought, quite an honor.
So you were honored, you said yes.
Yes.
And the two of you made this happen.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
With Pastor Heiliger?
Mm-hmm.
He said, you have to find out how we should go about this. So Sherry Fairman Hallberg, who is head of the Sunday school, she went with me 2 times to the state capitol to find out what we had to, how many children we could have and all the equipment we had to have. And so then we started that fall, we put the notice out. And I had 20 on Tuesday and Thursday morning and 20 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. And Norma Swanson and Shirley, what's her name? I can't think of her name. They helped me those 2 days in teaching.
Okay. So a total of 40 children at the very beginning.
40 children.
That's a lot when you just started. So there,
yes, and
there
then
obviously
after
was
that,
a need.
I became the director, and we added on more rooms.
Sure.
More children. And several times we had 400 enrolled.
Okay.
The people were lined up outside in a parking lot to get in to register.
Well, there was obviously a need, and the word was how fantastic this pre-K program is at Zion.
Yes.
That people felt the need to line up.
Yes, and there weren't any around here, so we just, so I just had to fix up many more different rooms. We couldn't, at the beginning, for the first 2 years, the high school was across the street, and they were renting 3 rooms. So we couldn't expand at that time because they were in those rooms. So after they left, then we could add on, more students.
So that's when Anoka High School was in the what is now Fred Moore building, right
Yes,
across
and they
the
were
street.
building a new high school. So that's why they rented over here. 3
Overflow.
Overflow, yes. So after they left, then we just expanded too.
Because you could, you had more rooms available. Do you recall how many years you were the director?
I was the director, 17.
17 years.
Yes.
And happy times.
The first 2 years I had my office in my basement at home because there wasn't any office here, and then there wasn't any office. When I did do it, I had a corner of the youth room.
That is it.
That was it. I had a desk and a file. And it worked.
So you mentioned earlier that you have been asked to help others start a program.
Yes, I did. I've helped several. The one out in Ham Lake, that minister was here first, and then he went out there, And then he found out we had started this, so he and another lady came to find out all the paperwork they had to go through. And I never did get out there for coffee once, or see him once in a while, and he'd say, "You haven't come." Well, now they built a new church out here, Our Saviors or what it was called. And so they moved out there, and they're still going, I guess.
Well, it's really nice that you offer your expertise to those who need some
I
direction.
went to several.
You have been a member of Miriam's Circle for years.
1961, I brought.
Okay. And you are currently the chair of the circle?
Yes,
Have you been the chair for a long time?
yes. Seems like it anyway.
So what kinds of things are your circle members involved in?
Well, we're working this year on cutting out these big stockings, and we're hoping to put up a box someplace with small things that we can put in these stockings. And they are going to one of these places that we support.
Do you also have a Bible study then?
Yes,
Okay. And you meet once a month?
once a month in the library. And Marilyn Herbold is our Bible study teacher.
Okay.
Excellent. You couldn't have a better one.
Tell me about your position as ambassador at Walker Residence.
That came on so fast that I don't. It's they asked me to go to the Jason show with about 10 of us, and invite him to come on May 2nd to the prom, and I was to be his guest, and we were going to be king and queen, I suppose.
Uh-huh.
And so he came and brought me a dozen roses, and
Oh, how nice.
we had a big party, and lots of people, of course. I was dressed in a formal, and so it just took all kinds of pictures and greeted people. So I really got to know a lot of people through that.
Well, what a nice experience.
Yes, he called me Grandma because he's only 44 years old. So we had an old, person, but they had a lovely table for us, and we had 5 other ladies. We all had formals, and so it was. I just felt I was on top of the world.
Well, I bet. That
Yes.
sounds like it would have been really special. Let's talk about the Lutefisk Supper. Tell me about that.
We had this fellow was not a minister; he was intern. Was that what you call?
An intern?
Anyway, he was head of the youth program, and my son was in the high league. And he came down to my office, in the nursery school office, and he said, "Marge, why don't we have a Lutefisk supper this fall so the kids can earn money to go to the hotel downtown Minneapolis for the youth encounter?" Well, I had no idea how much fish to buy for 500 people and all that. But we made it. My husband and I made it. We served 500 people. And we met with the kids. And the kids said all these things that we told them. I had told them what they had to do in order to earn money. They were paid by the hour in order to go to that. And it went so well. Every year the kids were so good in helping ahead of time, and cleaning up and washing kettles. And so it was very rewarding for me that they were so willing to do this.
Well, it's become a tradition for
Yeah.
Zion.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And do you attend every year?
Yeah, well, yeah, I helped cook the stuff, My husband had men come on Sunday afternoon and fillet 700 pounds of fish.
Oh my gosh.
And we took the cabbage out to Wilson School and chopped it up. And I made the syrup for that with 10 pounds of sugar, cooked
Right.
it.
And I understand even today, several people come just to peel the potatoes.
Oh, yeah. Well, when we did it, we took it over to the state hospital, and they ran it through that machine that takes a lot of the peeling off. Then I had ladies come and finish them here.
Well, that was a help.
Yes, and then Ernie Soine made all the meatball mix
Oh, he
down
did?
there. And so I had ladies come and make the meatballs. Now, of course, they buy the meatballs all done. But they rolled them up and then baked them. Then they put them in those big roasters. And I had the cream gravy made over at the school.
Okay.
I brought all the stuff over there, and then the janitors brought the cream gravy back in double boilers.
So a little bit of community involvement as
Yes,
well.
it was.
Uh-huh.
Then I had to bring that back the next day. But it was so successful that first year. I was so happy for the kids. I have to tell you something funny. When Todd was 3 years old in Sunday school, and Ralph was in bed because he'd been hurt on his job, and so we were riding home, and I said, "What did you sing?" This was Easter Sunday. "What did you sing in Sunday school today?" "We sang about Santa." I said, "Why would you sing about Santa? This is Easter Sunday." So the next Sunday I went in there and what's her name? Anyway, she was a teacher. And I said, "What song did you sing in Sunday school last Sunday?" They sang Hosanna in the highest. They sang about Santa.
Oh, Santa in the highest.
Hosanna in the highest.
Oh, that's precious.
I think that every time Easter I think of him coming home and saying Hosanna in the highest.
Oh, well, thank you again on behalf of the staff at Zion and the committee for 100 years celebrating Forward in Faith. Thank you again, Marge.
Well, I've enjoyed every minute of it.
I can tell. This is wonderful. Thank you.
Well, welcome to Zion Lutheran Church, Anoka, Minnesota, as we celebrate our 150th year history and we move forward in faith. Today, I have the great honor of visiting with Greg Bergeron. So, Greg, it's so nice to see you today.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
what is it? I'm going to start off with this. What is it that attracted you to Zion Lutheran Church in the beginning? And when was the beginning?
I was 6 years old.
Okay.
And my mother was an impetus for getting me started in church, but she got started here because my sister was married in 1941 by Pastor Arthur I. Anderson. And so that was how we got started.
Okay.
And we really got started because Armour Edberg one Sunday morning saw my mother and me sitting in about the middle of the old church for Sunday services, and he came down the aisle, came out of the altar, came down the aisle to my mother and said, "This boy needs to be confirmed." And so my mother said, "Okay, that's fine, but I have to ask his father first because his father is Catholic. And so he's going to have to make a decision about whether he wants me to be confirmed in the Lutheran Church or not."
Sure.
So we went home and we were sitting at the Sunday table eating dinner, and my mother said to my dad, "Pastor Edberg said to me this morning that it was time for Greg to be confirmed, but I'm not going to do it unless you decide to join the church with me." And my father looked at her and he said, "Okay."
Wow.
And that's how I got started.
And Greg, how was it here at Zion as a high school kid?
Well, I had a good time at Zion as a high school kid, but I didn't go to school in the Anoka school system.
Okay.
I went to a country school. I went to Crooked Lake when it was a country school.
Okay.
And so those periods, I didn't spend a lot of time with a lot of the kids in school. I started spending time with the kids in school when I was in junior high school.
Okay.
Because in 1946, Morris By came to town, and he came and consolidated the school district.
Oh, sure.
And so all of the schools that were outlying became part of the Anoka-Hennepin school system, except it was Anoka school system at the time.
Sure.
And then from that point, we started in 7th grade and came into what is now the Sandberg building, but we all came into junior high school, and it was from there that I really started to get involved with the kids, the people that were a part of my 7th, 8th, and 9th grade class.
Sure.
And I would say that probably it was in 8th grade that we started. I think about 8th grade that we started and got confirmed.
Was it a pretty active youth program? And
Yes, it was.
Tell me a few things you did.
It was called Luther League then.
Oh, yes.
And we were involved with Luther League. And we had several counselors. Bob Blewett was one of our counselors, and we used to go to Lutheran Bible Institute and on Saturday night, and there would be a sermon, and then there would be lots of singing and lots of excitement, and there'd be a lot of kids from around the Twin City area. And so it was a big operation.
Sure.
And so it's kind of interesting that that would go on and carry on. Lutheran Bible Institute was a very big part of our being. Okay.
Connected to Zion?
Outside, no.
Not connected
it's a
to Zion.
separate. It was a separate organization and school. In fact, Pastor Sue Walliger's mother graduated from Lutheran Bible Institute, and so that's kind of an interesting historical fact that went on.
Have you zeroed in on some specific areas through your life here at Zion, and could you tell us about those certain ministries that you've
Well,
been
one
a
of
part
the things that happened with Pastor Hellengren was Pastor Rock was the pastor at the time, and Ann had been trained in human services assistance programs, and in fact, she taught at the tech center.
Okay.
And so we went to a program that was similar. It was called the Samaritan Ministries, and we trained under that. Okay. And Pastor Rock was a part of that, and so she said, we'd like to get that started here in Zion, so what can happen? Well, Ann said, I would like to train in that area if I could, and I said, yeah, I would too. So we asked if we could train, and we trained for about 6 years, trained Samaritan ministers, we called them.
Okay.
And that got started. Ann and I are still visiting people.
Awesome.
We visited. Ann visited here for the church for 10 years. She was the parish visitor for 10 years.
Yes, that's right.
And so,
how
thank
about
you.
some of your favorite memories? What stands out as some, oh yeah, back, and if you can remember.
I was working on the committee when the pipe organ was decided to be put in, and Harold Bonnell was the leader of that group, and he asked me if I would be the one that would lead the charge for money, and we did. It was $180,000 that we needed at the time. Now this is in the late 60s.
Okay.
And we had a good campaign. The first weekend, there were a lot of people that were skeptical. It was, it wasn't a good time financially. We brought in $150,000 the first Saturday, and the other $30,000 the Sunday, and the remaining $30,000 the second Sunday.
Amazing.
And it was great. It was Peter Nickelmo came to me and said, one of the things that I would like to have you do is I would like to have you build a pastor's wall here in Zion. Pastor Berg, when he was at Christ Lutheran, they developed the pastor's wall, and we'd have meetings there, and they saw that pastor's wall, and I know that Peter and Mark Titi said, I think we ought to try something like that. One day, Mark came walking down the aisle after church and said, how would you like to do that? And I said, I would.
Yeah.
I would.
Great.
And so the pastor's wall was the start. And pretty soon, when Brent came, he said, I think probably you've got enough material here so that we ought to see what we can do. Well, by the time you start digging into all of the material, you find that you got papers and books and so on all over the place. So they started collecting them all, and we've got them all in one place now. That's the good thing about the process. I got to know the archivists at Gustavus. That was important because when people got done with school here and got done with their affiliation with Zion Lutheran Church, they went to Gustavus. So at one time we had 25 people at Gustavus from Zion Lutheran Church. And the archivist at the main church that these people attended when they attended Rock Island, when anybody that was going into the seminary, they were going to go to Rock Island Seminary and graduate from Rock Island.
Okay.
Luther wasn't much at that time.
I see.
That was not a big one. But it was interesting talking to the people at Augustana in Peoria, which was the church, and then Rock Island Seminary was there, okay?
Yes.
And that's where Highlandgren went. In fact, everybody up through Highlandgren went to that church. I don't know if Pastor Berg went to that seminary, but most of the time it was that kind of thing.
Okay.
And getting to know those people was important because they provided a lot of our pastors. They provided all of our pastors from 1870 to 1953.
Sure. Well, Greg, it's just been really, really enjoyable. I knew it would be fun to interview you and your wonderful insight into what Zion Lutheran Church means to you and what you're continuing to do among God's people. So thank you for your personality,
you're
your
welcome.
Voice, love your voice, your time and everything that you do to bring others to tell the stories about Zion.
Well, it's a joy. It's a joy.
I can tell.
God has given me the talents.
Yep.
And I've always been one of those people that said, why would you destroy something that God gave you? Why would you not use it?
Sure.
Welcome to Zion Lutheran Church, Anoka, Minnesota, as we celebrate 150 years forward in faith. Today I have the honor of visiting with Emily Johnson, who has been a member of Zion since birth, or as she said technically, since baptism. This interview is being conducted by Marlene Colvin on January 27th, 2020. Thank you for being here today, Emily.
Thank you for having me.
Would you like to tell us about how and when you became a member of Zion?
Well, I became a member of Zion when I was 3 weeks old, when I was baptized here.
And you have a history at Zion.
I do. My grandparents moved here when my father was, I think, 5, and so the family as a whole has been members ever since.
So your grandparents,
my grandparents, my parents, my siblings, my aunt and uncle, my cousins.
And now?
And now my daughter, yeah.
A 2-month-old daughter. Mm-hmm. That's very nice. So what a great legacy here at Zion. Why have you continued to be a member of Zion?
I love the community. I love the traditional worship that Zion has and the music. And I think it's a great place to grow in faith.
How have you seen Zion change or evolve during your time? Now, you've been here for a number of years, and you talked about childhood programs, adult programs, but how have you seen Zion change or evolve?
I think that Zion has gone through a number of phases in the last 30-some years. It's been interesting to see as pastors come and go, there's different habits that the congregation has picked up and dropped off. We used to sing the Kyrie and things like that every week, and now we do it some of the time instead of all of the time. Pastor Peter Nicomo brought in the practice of doing Christ care prayers at the beginning of meetings or small groups, and I found that's very helpful in terms of getting to know the people around you. It's and caring for them. And so there's different practices that we've picked up and dropped off as we've gone. We had an organist at one point that would play a threefold amen at the end of most hymns, and that was nice for a time, and it's nice now that we we don't do that anymore, and it's nice to have a variety of different mini traditions, sort of. It's also nice, though, that Zion has maintained its strong traditional worship with the organ and the choirs and things like that. The choral worship has had, it's been something that's happened every year of my life, and I'm sure many years before that. And it's nice to see that that has continued, even though as that has evolved and changed. I think that if a church were to never change anything, that would not be a very vibrant and alive church. However, it's also important to maintain traditions, and in doing so, to use that tradition to grow stronger in new ways.
Emily, you talked about the importance of the musical or the programs in the music programs at Zion, and you have been involved in those. Would you tell us a little bit more about your involvement in, say, the plays or the musicals that have been happening at Zion?
So I remember the first musical I did when I was at Zion was in first grade, when I did a musical with the elementary school choir, which at that point was just the first through third grade choir. And musical then, second grade. Third grade, we had a new choir director because Nancy Nordine took over. And that musical was the musical all about Grace. I specifically remember that. Her daughter was playing the character of Grace, and we were singing about how Grace is like Superman, and she lends a helping hand, and it was a very cute musical. They've done it a few times since then. When I was in fourth and fifth grade, that choir also did musicals. But then in addition to that, Pastor Strumman wrote musicals that we did in the summertime and at Christmas time. I remember in sixth grade I was the Angel Gabriel in the Christmas pageant, that Christmas pageant, not the Sunday school one. And there were also musicals based on surrounding the gospel stories that we did in the summertime. And those were really fun. And then in middle school, we did a Prayers at 13 musical. It was all about basically what are 13-year-olds going through in life and what will their prayers sound like. And it was a musical that we did. And we actually went on tour. We went up to Pine River, Minnesota, which is really cool because that's where my grandparents grew up. And we've done Lenten musicals, and the Lenten musicals were just plays, I guess. They weren't musicals. But we did Lenten plays, and we've done more recently some Good Friday plays and things like that. They've always been really fun to be a part of.
What about community involvement? We've not touched on, Zion does have a big involvement in our local community. And what part have you played in any of Zion's community involvement?
I think that the community involvement Zion does is fantastic. Most of the things that I've been involved in the community through Zion have been food-based. So I've packed at Feed by Starving Children with Zion, and especially for a while when my brothers were in high school, I was chaperoning a lot of that kind of stuff with the high school youth programs, and so I went there and packed food for Feed by Starving Children. My family and I have been involved with the food sorting on Thanksgiving Eve and then bringing it to ECBC and figuring out how many pounds it has and unloading it and everything like that. And that's always been a fun thing to do as a family with my original immediate family, I suppose you would say. And then I also a few years ago, more than a few years ago, started a program called Fare for All Express here. So Fare for All Express is through the Emergency Food Shelf Network, and they have food that can be purchased by anyone. It doesn't matter if you're low income or not. And they go out to different sites and bring these packs of food, and it's high quality vegetables, fruits, meats, etc., that you can buy at extremely discounted prices. And it actually works, it helps both ways. It helps people have access to less expensive food, but it also helps that food shelf group, because the more bulk food they buy at a time, the cheaper their prices are to help support both their food shelves and these programs. And so every month on a Thursday, that program comes to Zion and sets up, and then people come in, and members of the community, all sorts of members of the community come through, and Zion members come and Zion members help volunteer, but there's also non-Zion affiliated people who both attend and actually volunteer. And so I think that's really been nice to see the community interacting at Zion.
That's really good. What about camping experience?
Oh, camp.
Having been a young person in this church, I'm sure that you probably were involved in camping experiences in one way or another.
Yeah, I grew up going to WAPO every year. I actually went with my parents a few times before I was old enough to actually attend because they were helping out with the youth programming for the slightly older children. And then I went third grade, was a full week back then. So I went third grade all through high school. I was a Tim Teamer, Teens in Mission. It's a program that Camp WAPO has. And I loved it. WAPO is just such a great place. Any Bible camp, you learn so much being surrounded by nature, being away from your normal habitat, so to speak. You learn in a different way. Similar to learning through music, you're learning through experience and relationships with your counselors, with the other campers. It's a phenomenal experience. I actually went on, and in college I was a camp counselor there for 2 summers, and that was also, in a different way, a phenomenal experience. I honestly think that Bible camp is as much of a ministry to the counselors as it is a ministry to the campers. And Zion quite frequently sends a number of kids as counselors each summer, in addition to the hundreds of kids we send as campers.
Super. Anything else that you think about, not only on camp, but on any topic that you would like to share about Zion?
I would just say that Zion is a phenomenal community of faith. It is a place where all are welcome and all are loved and cared for, and there's something here for everyone. Whether you like to quilt or build houses, there's a ministry for you to join. And it's been a blast being a part of as many of those things as I've had time for.
My name is Mark Teedy, and I served at Zion as an associate pastor from September 2003 until about March of 2014.
Very good. Mark, what stands out to you about your experiences at Zion?
What stands out to me is the resilience of Zion Lutheran Church. When I came in 2003, Zion was in a sweet spot of its life. It was an exciting time to be a Lutheran in the Minneapolis Area Synod. It was an exciting time to be here in Anoka. Things were going great, and we were really hitting stride. It was a lot of fun. The camaraderie on staff, things were good. Then there was a chapter in the midst of that was not so much fun. A lot of pain, a lot of sorrow, a lot of tears, a lot of staff transition, feeling of despair sometimes, both on staff but also in the congregation, and almost like a loss of purpose after that. That then led to a rebirthing of a remarkable lay-led group with reconnecting to Nicaragua, connecting to this country of Sudan that became South Sudan with Pastor Mawan's leadership. And instead of being turned in upon ourselves, it was our local and global outreaches that turned us outward back into the community and really started a healing process of our congregation in those days. What I remember about my time and who this congregation was and who this congregation will continue to be is faithful, steadfast, and resilient. This is a heck of a congregation that is continually leaning forward into God's future. And I was really honored to be a part of that whole process.
Pastor Mark, I know that you have often referred to Pastor Mawan in many of the same terms that you would use for a brother.
Yeah.
Could you explore that a little bit? How did it come to be that you had such a close relationship with him, have such a close relationship with him?
Pastor Mawan and I became brothers. There was one night when we were traveling, we were in his home country, and we were in the city of Wau, South Sudan, spelled W-A-U. And we were there, and Mawan walks me out. It was after about 10 o'clock at night, they shut off all the generators, and so the city it's about the size of St. Cloud, but no streetlights. It just went pitch black. And there we were standing on this main road, and Mawan was telling me the stories of what it was like when it was under different national leadership. There was all kinds of issues between Christians and Muslims, but also Arab and black. and it was brutal. But he remembers the moment when it came to a head, and on the one side of that very street where the tribe of the Dinka people were standing with spears, and the other side was where another tribe was standing with government officials and tanks. And they lowered their guns as low as they could, and Mawayne ran as fast as he could away from there. And that day, hundreds of Dinka men were slaughtered. And he's telling me the story with tears down his face, and he said, I've never shared that story with anyone, but I'm sharing it with you because you are my brother. And that's when that became a thing. 3 days after that, we were walking through that same city of Wow, and we were with Mawayne's cousins and his uncles, and it was really hot. So we were trying to find some place where there was some shade and maybe a bottle of water to get out of that heat. And it was noon, midday. Shadows were nearly straight down. Hot. And all of a sudden I hear these guys making a ruckus. Of course, they speak their language of Jeng, and I don't. And they point over and they said, look, Mabior, look at all the Mabior, which is the term for a white cow. And just then, the bull came at the rear. The bull was kind of pushing all the cows forward. Giant, huge. And they said, Mabior dit. And they all pointed their finger at me and said, you are Mabior dit. And then I got named. So now I was Mabior dit, and Mawayne referred to him. And then I got sunburned that day. And so now I'm this pink man. That's what they referred to me as. And Mawayne referred to me with his friends as, we are brothers of different colored mothers. Only in South Sudan.
Okay, Mark, you've spent a lot of time talking about South Sudan, but
Yep.
obviously you had other ministry areas as well. What would be some of your most rewarding moments of your time here at Zion?
I think back to a moment when we reformed the serving ministries. Instead of local missions, global missions, we started calling it serving ministries. And we got a group of 10, I think it was. We had 2 for every aspect of the values of the congregation, plus institutional relationships, and then 2 co-chairs. So I think we were at 12, plus me as sort of these chair people. We rebirthed this deal, and we realized, man, if anybody's doing anything in the name of Zion in the community or worldwide, we need to bring everybody together and ask, what are you doing, what works, what is not working? So we decided we'd hold a mega meeting. That was in September of 2013, and nobody came. I think we had 8 people that showed up that day, and I was absolutely bummed. And that next Sunday or so, many people said, I forgot about the meeting. We were going to, yep. So we decided, let's give it another try. Well, let's see what we can do. And in December of that year, there were 124 people in the fellowship hall.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't say a word. Everybody reported on what they were doing, representing each one of the congregational values, how that was manifesting itself in the local community, in the local issues, local aspects. The Hope for Youth was a brand new thing that was being birthed at that time. Family Promise of Anoka County was a new thing. Our relationships with the Anoka Hennepin School District was a new thing. What was happening in Nicaragua, happening in South Sudan, they all talked about it. The meeting lasted like an hour and a half. And when we all got done, one of the co-chairs of the serving ministry said, Pastor Mark, would you like to say anything? And I got up and said, wow, thank you. This is phenomenal. And I still to this day, I think of that moment as sort of a crown jewel for serving ministries in this congregation, because it was very clear the buy-in and support of the congregation for that ministry was really a marvelous moment.
So, Pastor Mark, we know that you were involved in some of the early beginnings of the faith community partnership in our community, especially with our school district, but some other parachurch organizations as well. Could you explore that some? Tell us some more about that.
Yeah. Forgive me that I don't remember the year. I think it was 2010, 2011, I think. There was these horrible, really sad moments in this public school district, the Anoka-Hennepin Public School District, where there was something like 11 suicides of students, like 5 deaths of teachers, some of which were really sad. I remember a teacher had an aneurysm in the middle of the hallway. It was a really, really tough chapter. The Anoka-Hennepin School District put out an all call to every faith community and asking, hopefully, that some of the church leaders would come. Just come. And so we did. And so the superintendent of schools pulled us together. We met over there, and they could not believe the response that came when every single congregation that I'm aware of, the pastors or leaders of the congregation showed up, and it didn't matter the denomination. St. Stephen's, we were there. The Greek Orthodox guy was there. He doesn't show up for anything, and he came. All the E-Freers congregations, the room was full of, I bet, 150, 200 congregations standing in the middle of this thing. And Denny, the superintendent of schools, got up and said, listen, I remember that he said, we have exhausted all resources we've got on this world. Now we've asked you to come because we need some help from above, and we don't know where to go. And a woman from the way back of the room, she goes, I know we're not supposed to pray in schools, but we're praying now. And the superintendent of schools says, Dennis Carlson says, let us pray. And she led us in a prayer that was asking that God would blow through us all and figure this out. What, Lord, do we need to do? And I thought, well, I just need to let him know I'm willing. So after that meeting concluded, I walked right up to Dennis Carlson and said, if there's any way that I can help or that Zion can help, I'm in. Give me your phone number. Took down my phone number and my email address, and I thought, that'll be it. Next, I think it was not 3 days later, I get a phone call. He said, I'm putting together a task force. Will you come? Yeah. And so we showed up, and there was probably 8-10 leaders around the table. What are we going to call ourselves? Faith community leaders. We had our opinions, but we were given the name of Anoka-Hennepin Faith Community Partnership Task Force. Rolls right off the tongue. And from that moment, we then partnered with them to assign every school a faith community, church, synagogue, whatever, partner with that school. And then out it went, and we just responding to our needs. And one of the greatest things, again, part of that outward turn, so we weren't feeling sorry for ourselves anymore, was this moment. It was really a call to action that the congregation rallied around. And I'll never forget the first thing that we did in that partnership was Fred Moore School. They needed help with that one, actually the Lincoln Elementary, needed help with these little boys and girls who were standing alongside because they didn't have proper winter attire. And I went to the microphone, made a little temple talk that we're going to be collecting hats, mittens, gloves, jackets, and boots, and snow pants. And so please, if you would, go shopping, bring it in, and if you have lightly used stuff, we're going to be collecting that. At the time, Connie and I, one of our vehicles was a minivan, fold in the floor seat minivan thing. I filled that van 3 times, plumb to the roof, with nothing but boots.
Wow.
Drove over to the, and I'll never forget the woman over at the Anoka-Hennepin School District. I showed up, she couldn't believe it was so full of those boots. Unpacked the boots, I said, I'll be back. She goes, you'll be back? Oh, I've got more. Came back, filled my car up, brought it over. What? I said, oh, I got more. It was 3 loads of my minivan full of mostly boots, but it also had mittens, it had it all. And I remember thinking in that moment, just, wow, can this congregation do something?
If this was a DVD, on special features, there would be a place where we could click on bloopers. Mark, would you care to tell us about a couple of funny moments of your time here at Zion that you can say on camera?
I was going to say, I don't know if I can say that on TV. Oh, man. I think I could. You could ask the colleagues with which I worked about bloopers about Mark Teedy. I think they'll tell you them more than I've got about me. I guess one of my bloopers is that, Your former head usher would remind you that I'm guessing that I still hold the record for the longest sermon ever preached at a mid-service Lenten worship service. It was smack dab in the middle of our 40 Days of Purpose Lenten Bible study series. And I was doing the alpha talk for one of those. And the service was supposed to go 45 minutes. My sermon did.
If I recall, there were 3 services that day, and the first one was short, and the second one was medium, and the third one was over 45 minutes. Is
You're
that correct?
correct. That's correct.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
Well, Zion is richer because we had those years together with you, and we hope that you will not be a stranger and come back and visit us often. We know you're celebrating with us for our 150th anniversary.
Yeah.
Is there any other words you would like to leave for our congregation before we part ways?
I would say this. In the 10 and a half or so years, whatever, in the years that I was able to serve as your pastor, you as a congregation, we as a congregation, we had some unbelievably wonderful moments. And we had some unbelievable, horrible moments. And through it all, God reigned, and God loved, God forgave, and God brought us back to life. I am so proud of Zion Lutheran Church for enduring, persevering, and coming out the other side with a sense of humility, but also purpose, with a sense of honor, but not pride. And I'm grateful to have been offered the opportunity to say, yes, I'd love to serve you as your pastor. It was a defining time in my professional life, and it's time in a chapter of my life. I'm truly proud to have been here in those moments. So my word is grateful. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you, Zion and Lutheran. I am grateful to you.